You are not seeing the same series twice, guys. We had MaxPax and Clem for breakfast, but what about second breakfast? In the bottom left of this map, Alcyone, for the start of a best-of-5 finals of the North American EPT Open Cup, it is Team Liquid's Clem. In the top right, for Storm, it's MaxPax. Just a mere 5 hours ago, we had MaxPax dismantle Clem. It was actually very one-sided. But Clem might have changed his way when it comes to TvP. He is a very typical Terran player, so not to be mean, it's very typical because it works out really well. So you get some early game shenanigans, maybe a little micro, maybe a couple of proxies, you know, something, whatever you want to do. And you got your mid game where you're typically still the strongest, you go for an attack, doesn't maybe kill the person, but then you go for a couple of drops, you know, it's TvP. Well, Clem might still be doing some micro in the early game and might still posture in the mid game, but he has been going for some intentional late game TvPs. By intentional, I mean not really doing a lot of pushing before that third base is done, and then actually not really doing any pushing as he grabs a relatively fast fourth and looks towards the maxed out stage, possibly into Liberators. And he's done this before. When he's had trouble with Protoss, he has done that transition. Mid-series, mid-day, mid-tournament, whatever. So it seems to be somewhat of a fallback. Now, it could be that it's a fallback as in, you know, you aren't necessarily confident with it, but it seems to work, so you're going to keep doing it. If it works, right? But it also could be that he just identifies that this also kind of offsets his opponent. The opponent expects a certain way for Clem to play. They're starting to take advantage of that, the pacing that they can now predict, and then he suddenly just stops doing anything. So you're like, but you're supposed to zig, and you zagged. And it worked specifically against MaxPax in one of their very many best of fives, like a year ago. MaxPax was clobbered him 2-0. Back when they were a little bit more back and forth. And suddenly Clem was intent on just bringing up to the 4th and 5th bases, you know. He's like, whatever, I'm not going to do anything. Stop it. And he defended the 4 gates and all the aggressive stuff that MaxPax can do, and then he went out in the late game because he was the one that was kind of setting the pace. Now, MaxPax's late game is actually very good, and if it's a more of a typical TvP back and forth, mid-game, medevac action, Protoss barely holds, Colossus counter push, I think the MaxPax tends to win those games the longer they go, but if Clem is just going to go ahead and wash his hands of some of the expectations of Terran mid-game and go straight into late, MaxPax might be a little unsettled. He has been before. Not much to report on right now. We got a bunker protecting the SCV. Micro! Pretty good. It's pretty good. Adapt will give up, and it has done the maximum amount of damage that it can. Command Center will finish as an orbital, and everything is as it should be. MaxPax is adding on Blink and adding on gateways. He is now a big believer in the 3-gate as opposed to the 4-gate, but he does sprinkle in a 4-gate every now and again. Honestly, Clem's best of 5 versus MaxPax earlier today looked more and more depressing. It's not that he didn't react appropriately to the situation, it just, it did not look very cool. The first game was alright, but MaxPax did win it. Second game, Clem moved out, got bodied by a Warp Prism, and kind of lost his soul. Usually you can see his soul escaping, and he just left the game. And then the third game, it looked like he almost had a premature tap out, but upon reflection, it was evident that he had scouted the 4 gates that his opponent was doing finally again, and had not had the appropriate defenses. So, I mean, I think you can... Clem, particularly, can come in with a fresh read on the situation, especially if he's going to play a different style. I got a Woodamine drop. Single Woodamine. Really for a lot for scouting. It's not going to see the third base, because something already did. I guess the Hellion or whatever he built. So he knows it's not a 4-gate. It's not even a 3-gate. MaxPax is actually 2-gate fast expanding, which he's been bringing into his book of builds. Clem, realizing this pretty quickly thanks to that Hellion or Reaper Scout, might actually choose to try and punish it, but this is not necessarily Clem's strength. I mean, he's clearly good with micro, and this seems like a very micro-dependent type of engagement, so what's the problem? Well, it doesn't scream Clem to me. This screams Kelazur. Or a frustrated hero marine sometimes. Or what's his name? Euthermal, there we go. Former Team Liquid Euthermal. Not necessarily Clem. We'll see how it goes. MaxPax is already on top of it, and it's already taking care of quite a few marines. And while those aren't the heavy hitters of this particular push, they are the fodder that kind of makes it all go together. Tank is taken out at the cost of only one stalker, two stalkers, just barely. But still, that one tank is worth a lot more, just in consideration of how the critical mass, I guess, works, right? Two tanks blasting away at the stalkers in case they ever group up is very hurtful. One tank actually is kind of lame. The amount of concaving you can do and the shots you can take double, obviously, and so it's not as big of a deal. Excellent prediction from MaxPax. I mean, I think he might have seen it as well from the Observer, to be fair, but if he predicted it, wouldn't be surprised. Liberator was going up the exact place you would expect it, and the other Observer also would have seen it, so at the very least, he was not going to take damage, but he nips it in the bud, takes care of it on the map, gets on the map with his actual army, because he can, and Clem is in a wee bit of trouble. Now, with his tank siege, I don't think he's going to die to this, but it was a little concerning with the Immortal coming through. Just enough bio to protect the tanks that are thankfully already sieged. And MaxPax will not get a cheeky win right here. It has happened, but it's kind of not supposed to, but it has happened. Just a couple units too much out of position, and the tank's a little too unguarded. The Immortal comes over when you don't expect that thing to crab walk itself across the map, and I didn't think it has won games against Clem before. Clem has an 8 Marine drop looking to hit the natural when MaxPax is least expecting. I mean, he's not expecting it at all right now. He's got his attention fully on the front line. Stalker once again picking off units as the army comes across the map. War Prism looking to get into the main, which is so far undefended. And so the last thing he's looking at is that natural, which now he's looking at. No recall. Dark Shrine scouted too. This is a distraction. At the end of the day, this is going to do a lot of damage, but distraction is going to let Clem's army get on the front of the third, or rather fourth base, excuse me. However, the War Prism is also a distraction that actually has a little bit more power to it. Fourth base will be sacrificed, not canceled though, and that is a mistake, because that thing's gone. The tanks are firing on it. Now the tank's appropriately firing on the army. MaxPax realizes he cannot take it on, with Clem actually paying attention. War Prism did kill 9 SCVs, 10, 11 actually, as the Zealots continue to hammer that third base, but Clem is giving almost as good as he's getting. He killed 9 workers and the Nexus after all, but won't find too much more. More Zealots making their way across the map as MaxPax has figured there is a weak point, and he might be correct about that. Clem is looking to actually reinforce at pretty much the exact wrong time. Another Marauder bites the dust. What am I going to try and help? And it will, but there's very few army units, actually. That bunker is going to be helpful, and the tank's going to try and abuse this ledge as long as they possibly can, but time is running out. More reinforcements are coming in, particularly the charge lots. And they're going to jump on top of those tanks and make them very ineffective. Wardamine's giving a little bit of a heads up to Clem so he can react a little bit stronger, and this is a pretty nice defense, if you will, of Clem's attack. The tank did get a couple shots on those stalkers, weakened them up, forced them to run away, and so their blink will not quite get this last medevac. That could have gone a lot worse for both parties. Clem does all of that and also defends those Zealots. Had a heck of a time in doing so, but MaxPax also defending the 3 base setup that he still has. Did, after all, lose that 4th, so he's in a slightly uncomfortable position. It's going to take a very, very long time to replace the 4th, and then what if a drop comes in and gets another cancel? He's not exactly in an ideal Protoss position, but it certainly is workable. Very dependent currently on Zealots, which, yeah, again, is not ideal, especially if Clem is actually getting ahead in the upgrades, which he absolutely is not. I take that back. A lot of the time, the Terran will be ahead. They get the Engineer Bay faster, +1 attack faster, move on to +1 armor pretty much immediately after. It times out. But actually, in this case, MaxPax already on double forge. Clem just seemed to have skipped or forgotten or misclicked his +1 armor. Is falling very far behind there. Not yet, though. That's kind of the important thing. The Zealots are not chunky boys. A couple Colossus got added in. Crucial Guardian Shield, an Immortal to pack a punch against the Marauders. MaxPax's army is certainly workable. But it needs to be very, very cautious about Widow Mines that could or could not be there, because the Zealots are a fairly substantial front line. Widow Mine drop going to kill a couple of probes and a Stalker. Not too shabby. I have no idea what happened to it. Presumably it died. I blinked and I missed it. Widow Mines, I think, might get a second shot. One of them will, I think. Ooh, the timing. Ooh, the timing. Ooh, Lord baby Jesus, the timing. Oh, wow, they ended up being so perfect. One Widow Mine was slightly faster to recharge, and that was the one that was killed first. Whew. Shadow Stride is on the way. The Dark Shrine was scouted, but might have been forgotten about in all the hubbub, to be honest. I mean, you should never forget about DTs, but there's a lot been going on. Speaking of which, we do have a main engagement, which actually Clem is kind of eager to take. Now, the upgrades are favorable to the Protoss. It's something that Clem's got to keep in mind, but only by one upgrade is not the worst situation. It did look like MaxPax was caught a little off guard, and so Clem kind of understandably looked like he wanted to take the engagement, decided not to actually go for it. Medivacs, not very healthy. They don't have a lot of juice. The Viking count wasn't particularly strong, and he wasn't pre-concaved. He was still rather bunched up, so... On the other hand, MaxPax looked at the army and saw that he was a little surprised by it, and I can see why they both would respect each other there. Planetary on the way for Clem. Disruptors on the way for MaxPax, as his 4th base has finished up, has gotten saturated, and then he immediately moves on to building a 5th. Keep the ball rolling. Clem has not played the super defensive style, for anyone who was wanting some clearing up on my earlier introduction to the game. He has played it differently than when he was playing versus Estrella and another Protoss I've already forgotten. Wah! Disruptors! Oh my god, this is such a ballsy move. And it is not going to work for Clem. That did not work. He spent so much time chasing the Disruptor and, well, avoiding the Disruptor is more like it, actually, that he spent none of that time actually attacking. A portion of his army was just dead set on making sure the Disruptor got killed. So he falls behind even further in supply. Now down by about 60 army. Still down in the the upgrades. And actually now under a tremendous amount of pressure. Does look like he's about to be a goner. The Vikings now useless in the sky as well, as the Colossus weren't even a part of this. Where they were and they died, and now the reinforcing ones aren't. Or they got recalled, I'm not even sure. But it doesn't matter. The point is, Clem did not defend that as well as he was hoping to. And is now very desperate. Pulling the SCVs, thinks, okay, maybe I don't have to. Maybe this is all right. Then bam, suddenly 2 Colossus show up. All the Disruptors looking to be dead, though. 2 survive, just barely. Clem is not out of this game yet, but it was dangerously close to being game over. You got 2-3 on the way for MaxPax. Clem actually going to be able to finish up 2-2 before the next engagement by the looks of things. He is woefully low on Vikings now that the Colossus are a part of the army. Gets a preemptive EMP to start things off and has a bit of a concave to work with and less CD pool, which might keep him alive, just not thriving. But he is absolutely on the ropes. And just to finish what I was trying to say, he was playing a more typical TvP. The back and forth has been here. Lots of engagements have happened, and not necessarily in favor of Clem, who is again on the ropes. Now figuring that he has time right there to chase after the Colossus and hopefully find the Disruptors without an ammo shot, but they do have their shots. They will help the retreats. Even more reinforcements coming in as well, and Clem would be wise not to overchase. A lot of Zealots coming forward here, and those Medivacs are once again running out of energy. This is where a Caduceus Reactor would be very helpful, but he hasn't gotten to the Fusion Core yet. Because it has been so back and forth, so action-packed, and oh god, the Disruptor was pretty freaking good. Ghost managed to avoid certain death, but a couple still go down to the second Disruptor anyway. And Clem has not been on a comfortable supply in the last 2 or 3 minutes. Constantly stimming, constantly using up the energy on his Medivacs, and still not able to get rid of these pesky Colossus. They're adding in so much kind of free damage. The Viking count is growing, and it might eventually take them out, and they'll be back to just trying to micro against the Disruptors, which Clem is very good at, but he is so freaking desperate. Again, out-upgraded as well when some of these Zealots actually get up close and personal. And he is just going to tap out, as the DTs, I think, just jumped on top of his Planetary. I saw it on the minimap before I tapped out. His Planetary had just fallen. Yeah. That wasn't Clem being super defensive. It did get up to 4 bases, almost 5, but it was so back and forth. The games that Clem were playing against Estrella and, God. Oh, Protoss, and I just... Creator, that's what it was. Creator, he was playing very... passive, even. So if that was... That reached 14 and a half minutes, just about. He would have been... Oh, boy. We move on to Radisset Station. In the top right, we do have MaxPax. In the bottom left, it is Team Liquid's Clem. Last series they played today, the second map was Equilibrium, which is a map that's actually kind of powerful for Protoss. But I think Radisset beats everything. Radisset's very good for Protoss. And Equilibrium really was the start of the true soul leaving the body moment of Clem, I guess. Like, he had given a good fight in game 1, just like this series, and then game 2, he found himself overwhelmed by War Prism. Tale as old as time. And then it just really felt like it was a comical, like, Majin Buu type of effect. The ghost just came out of his mouth. And then he died in the third game pretty quickly. I'm hoping it's not the same case here. It's almost guaranteed not to be the same exact situation, because Equilibrium has less inclination to super turtle games. Radisset has the most potential for super turtle games. And if Clem, having done more of a typical TvP pace in the last game, lost and went, you know what? Yeah, truly, F that. I'm not doing it anymore. Radisset's an ideal map for him, too. You know, looking at the bright side, I suppose. But Radisset's one of the maps where Protoss actually is favored. So this seems like an ideal situation for MaxPax. Clem probably vetoing Equilibrium, actually, instead of this one. Anyway, we'll see if he plays Super Turtle. Super Turtle. Probe sees that it is a 1-Rax expands. No scouting for Clem as he opts for a Marine opener into Reactor. Just waiting on that 50 gas. MaxPax's probe hasn't gone too far away, has it? You think it's the macro map? You think it's where Protoss can be all pretty? Staying on 3 bases, no problem? Wacha-cheese! Might be looking at a 3-gate opener, and the Marine went out to scout for a little something. Maybe a braver pylon, I suppose. An Adept, a Zealot waiting for reinforcements. Who knows? But he didn't actually scout far enough to see that actual proxy pylon. And that is just tough cookies. That is sad, heartbreaking. Are we going to get a repeat of the last series? A different circumstance for game 2, different map, different build, different reason as to why Clem hates his life, but could still end up being that result. 3cc up against the fast 3-gate. Just logically, we're seeing an aggressive opener versus a very greedy opener. And logically, you would say that aggressive opener should do well. Oh no, the Adept is going to be able to scout! Oh, it's going to block the Cyclone production, and even if it's only for 10 seconds, that is still so painful. Oh my god. Now, funnily enough, I don't think the Adept scouted the 3rd CC, so there might be some ambiguity as to whether or not this is a proxy starport, but there's obviously a lack of starport. I don't think he quite saw the lack of second gas either. Okay, well now the jig is up, no matter what. So let's stop over analyzing that situation. The Cyclone had gone forward, saw the Stalkers, and went, oh shit. Mass repair on top of the Cyclone might just save the day. No, it will not. 3 Stalkers and an Adept out DPSing their repair. 2 more Cyclones are on the way, but they were supposed to be here already. They would have joined up with the 3rd Cyclone and saved its life if that Adept had not blocked the factory. Ay. MaxPax has really got Clem's number in the last couple of weeks, man. Ay. This is it. That's it, man. The Cyclone numbers will never be enough to overpower the Stalker numbers. Like, should still be reinforced. It even had to be. GG, MaxPax for the 2-0. Oof. Alotote. Ajoloto. Thank you for the Prime sub. I love my NA week with 2 European players. Feels good. North Americans might not have the best players in esports a lot of the time. But we do have the best commentators. In the top left of Oceanborn, and possibly the final game of the series, it is MaxPax. In the bottom right, looking at a potential sweep yet again, it is Clem. He was swept by MaxPax earlier today in the European Open Cup, and they are looking to do the repeat in the North American Open Cup. Kind of the same way things have happened as well. Different build orders, different times of which the player is certainly dead, but kind of sharing a lot in the ideas. First game was back and forth, kind of contentious. Certainly a good showing for both players, won by MaxPax. Second game, the map seemed to be already good for the Protoss, which is nice, but doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win. And then you saw Clem's body leave his soul in game 2 on Equilibrium earlier today as he moves out, gets warp prismed. And then today, in the North American Open Cup, you see him just be so disappointed that the time at which he chooses to 3CC is when he gets 3-gated. And specifically, what could have saved his butt was having 3 Cyclones together fighting. But an Adept Shade was so perfectly timed. I mean, that just feels incredibly unlucky. So it's a different type of crushing defeat, but nonetheless, once again, Clem finds himself on his last life against some Protoss bullshit. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But it is probably a little discouraging to be at this point in time 0-5 against MaxPax for the last 24 hours. MaxPax, obviously, good strategic decision. Figured that his opponent was going to try and get away with some greed, and could very well have done the same thing himself and still had a solid game, but decided to go for the 3-gate. It really still, I think, hinged on that one Cyclone being out on the map, getting shot, not being able to be repaired, and then not being joined up by its buddies. Like, there's still a very solid chance that Clem's Cyclone reactor follow-up could have held. I absolutely believe that, but not in that game. So the Reaper opener is going to scout around, but only going to be able to scout so much. The Adept is already on its tail. It is a Twilight Council opener. In the final game earlier today, it was a Twilight Council into actual 4 gates. Not 3, not 2, but actually 4. And then Clem had gone for a very intense factory build. He built a Hellion and 4 Widow Mines, all of those things, not a tank. And he really needed a tank against the 4-gate. So as his drop kind of didn't do much, you know, it might have done something. He knew that he wasn't going to live against the 4-gate, so he just tapped out right then and there. So it was kind of a disappointing ending for everyone. This time around, Clem doesn't look to be focusing so much on that. I mean, he didn't get a Hellion, which means he might have a little more trouble scouting, but if he just defaults to that factory tank production, then it's not necessarily a problem. The Widow Mine drop, we'll see if it is a 4-gate versus 3-gate, and then you can build the extra bunker if necessary. It is 4-gate, by the way. 3 gateways in total on that production tab. MaxPax going for the same. I mean, he might have even done a 3-gate proxy in the second game earlier today, and I just don't remember. No, he didn't. He didn't, actually. No, he didn't. No. But he's trying to end the series the same way. That is for sure. The 4-gate once again coming out and hoping to find Clem in a very poor position to defend it, but he is in a much better one. His factory has gotten much faster to producing a tank. This is a very, very, very typical bread and butter opener for a Terran player. This is the majority of the defenses that happen against a 4-gate are based off of this build. Now, the medevac is not going to survive, which is a bummer, and those Widow Mines will not get a key hit on the probes, which is the second bummer. Fairly long time to have the probes not mining, but ultimately that wasn't the best situation for Clem, who also didn't get the full amount of scouting possible. You know, there's just 1 gateway in the main, a Twilight Council, and 2 gateways at the front. But that is 3, and there's actually 4. And I am seeing no bunker. That's actually a big mistake, because bunker really does need bunker. Clem really does need a bunker. At least one. And in fact, if he knew it was a 4-gate, he probably would be getting 2. So this is the danger zone. Danger zone! The tank does go into a more cautious location, so while the bunker will not get up and running, the tank will not get bodied. And that means that Clem can, in fact, hold. But it's still obnoxious, because this is a full-on 4-gate. That's a lot of stalkers still alive, still looking for the opportune moment to jump on top of a tank. And if they can't do that, then they'll continue poking at the SCVs and the Marines and the command center. It might eventually even force that to lift, further delaying the mining. I believe there's a Raven doing some auto-turret harassment, but that is really not the story. The story is whether or not Clem can hold and not be 3-0'd once again by the great MaxPax, the Danish prince. But it is looking like it is going to be the same story the second time around. MaxPax eating his Wheaties, particularly the anti-Clem Wheaties that apparently Kellogg sells. Good on him. Only found in Denmark. MaxPax now with a streak of victories against the Great Terran. And Clem is going to have to shore up his TvP going forward into Katowice, because while MaxPax will not be there, he doesn't go to offline events and even try, he's now giving the general public a decent amount of replay analysis to be done. So, Clem's got to work on that. Another 3-0. Hope you guys still enjoy the cast, and I'll see you guys next time for more StarCraft 2.